We've reached the month of March, and since January and February only had two new releases each that I reviewed, and I couldn't exactly do a ranking where there's only two each, I decided to combine both January and February to make a total ranking of four movies and shows. Here's my ranking of all four of the January and February 2026 movies and shows that I saw from worst to best. In last place is Goat. This movie is the antithesis to Hoodwinked. What I mean by that is that Hoodwinked was a movie with cheap animation but sharp writing. Goat is a movie with great animation but weak writing. It's sad that the studio that gave us the beloved Spider-Verse and surprise hit K-pop Demon Hunters couldn't bring that talent from a story standpoint to this film, and I can't believe they delayed Beyond the Spider-Verse and put money and talent into this. And I also can't believe that K-pop Demon Hunters went to streaming, but they thought this was good enough for theaters. The plot is sort of a fusion of Zootopia and Space Jam, and it's alright if you're a sports fan. If not, it's hard to get invested unless you're 8 years old or younger and you like talking animal movies. The humor is surprisingly flat, relying on lowbrow potty humor and references to outdated memes such as the Screaming Goat and Grumpy Cat. I highly doubt the kids that this is aimed at will even get those references, as those memes were likely before their time, and the parents will be too old to find them funny. That sweet spot of teenagers probably won't care to see this movie at all. The film can also be very distracting by inserting real world product placement such as Sony, obviously, but also DoorDash, which is also a major plot point, and Uno. They could have at least made parody logos with animal puns like Zootopia did, since this movie is clearly so trying so hard to be that film. According to IMDb, this is the first major project for the film's writers, and oh boy, you can tell. It's harmless enough for kids who like sports, but considering that basketball player Steph Curry is one of the executive producers on this film, this, like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Shaquille O'Neal, once again proves that unless you're a professional wrestler, which isn't even a real sport anyway, athletes should not be involved in making major decisions with movies. It's an airball. Number three, Solo Mio. This movie is predictable, but it's also kind of charming in a very safe, low stakes kind of way. Like, if you've seen even a handful of rom coms in your life, you're going to get the entire roadmap of this film almost immediately. And I mean that literally. Within the first 10 minutes, I knew exactly where it was going. Not in a, wow, I'm so smart way. More like the movie is basically holding up a big sign that says, don't worry, we're not taking any risks. Because this is one of those films that follows the same plot template you've seen 1,000 times. It's got the classic tropes, the unexpected misunderstandings, the here we go emotional beats, the forced detours. It's paint by numbers. And that could be okay. Plenty of rom-coms are formulaic and still fun. The problem is that Solo Mew doesn't really do enough with the formula to make it feel fresh or memorable. The plot itself is pretty thin, too. It's not layered, it's not surprising, and it's not driven by character growth so much as driven by we need to hit the next rom-com checklist. And that leads into my biggest issue. There's not much character arc. People don't really change in any meaningful way. It just kind of moves through the plot until the movie arrives at the ending it was always going to have. And this whole thing just feels like an excuse for Kevin James to get a paid vacation to Italy. Because the Italy setting is obviously the main appeal. We've got gorgeous locations, the romantic European getaway vibe, and the movie clearly wants you to soak in the scenery. The setting does a lot of the heavy lifting for the film. It gives it an automatic warmth and a little bit of that travel poster charm, but at the same time, it also makes the story feel even more like it's coasting. Like, don't think too hard, just look at how gorgeous Italy is. Now, Kevin James is kind of where things get tricky with this movie. Kevin James does best when he's doing what he does naturally comedy, awkward energy, the kind of lovable goofball character. This movie is trying to do more drama, and I just don't think that's his strength. When the movie asks him to have some like real emotion, it doesn't exactly land the way it should. And it's not just him. The performances overall feel pretty phoned in. They're just kind of low energy. Like everyone just showed up to get their paycheck and then went home. There aren't many moments where you feel like the actors are really elevating the material or bringing unexpected charm. Which is a problem, because with a thin plot, you need the performances to sell it. And as regarding the comedy, the movie is mostly just light chuckles, not entirely big laughs. That's not always a deal breaker. Rom-coms don't have to be hilarious, but it's extra noticeable here because the movie really wants you to laugh. The comedy feels like it's trying too hard, like it's leaning into look how quirky and awkward the situation is, but the jokes don't have that timing that makes them land. So I find myself going, okay, I get it, haha, more than actually like laughing. I don't even really remember many jokes from this movie anyway. But I've seen worse rom-coms. This one is perfectly watchable if you're in the right mood, like you want background cozy movie energy, it'll do its job. And it's very clean. It avoids something that a lot of rom-coms lean on way too hard. A lot of movies in this genre use sexual content as comedy. and mostly makes you just want to pause the movie and leave the room. Solo Mute doesn't really do that. It's a safer, more couple-friendly watch. So if you're looking for a movie that won't embarrass you on date night, or you want something you can watch with someone without it getting awkward, this is honestly Appointment's favor. But at the end of the day, it's just safe and nothing more. It doesn't swing big, it doesn't take risks, and it doesn't leave much of an impression once it's over. It's perfectly average. It's not painful, it's not great, it just exists. Number two, Mercy. I got about what I was expecting going into this. From the trailer, I said it looked like a cheaper Minority Report, and to some degree that is true, but at the same time, it also does enough that's different to stand on its own. The closest thing I would say to this movie is the movie's Missing and Searching, where it's the audience solving a mystery, and it's all done through phone and computer screens. The story, while again it does have its similarities to Minority Report, is compelling and engaging. There's not a good spot to go to the bathroom because there's so much that never slows down as information is revealed. However, the narrative structure can feel a bit rushed in certain ways. The movie just kind of starts without much exposition, whereas Minority Report took the time with its world building. This feels like an abridged version of a book, except it's not based on a book. It's exciting and thrilling, has a fair amount of twists that I'll admit I didn't see coming. But in terms of the message, it doesn't say anything that hasn't already been said in 1,000 other AI movies. And this is from MGM, which is now owned by Amazon. And this is what it feels like. An Amazon Prime movie that for some reason they decided to justify an IMAX 3D release. The 3D is so useless in this movie. I forgot it was in 3D like 2 minutes in. It's not like Avatar, where the 3D felt immersive. This just felt like a way to increase the ticket prices to get as much money as possible on a passable film. And coming in at first place is Marvel's Wonder Man. For those thinking the MCU is getting stale and formulaic, this is a project that, in the best way, forgets the formula entirely. There's not a single action scene in this whole show. It's a very low stakes buddy comedy, and for some people that may not work because it's not what they expect when they think of Marvel, but I found the show delightfully unconventional. I think the reason they dropped all the episodes at once instead of on a weekly schedule is mainly, of course, not to clash with the March release date of Daredevil Born Again Season 2, but also because this isn't really the kind of show that lends itself to weekly viewing. The episodes don't end with this big, oh no moment that makes you want to watch the next episode the next week. It flows very smoothly into episodes that, for the most part, are pretty self contained. This is another MCU project that stood on its own, with the exception of Ben Kingsley reprising his role as the Mandarin. But even then, the viewer is given the necessary info to follow the story. There aren't 10,000 references and name drops to past MCU projects. There's no big season finale cameo from the main Avenger. It's just kind of a cozy buddy comedy about Hollywood. And if you're like me and you're fascinated by the filmmaking process, this is both a love letter to it and a satire of it. However, at times it can be a bit pretentious and self-indulgent, such as when characters monologue about the noble profession of acting and how wonderful it is to be an actor. In fact, episode 6 you can pretty much skip entirely, because it's essentially a 30-minute acting class. I did enjoy how unconventional the show could be. It's probably the most out there Disney Plus series since WandaVision, including having one of the episodes be 98% black and white. However, that episode also feels pointless, because it sets up a character that I thought was going to be the villain for the second half of the show, but it's just a standalone episode that doesn't really affect the rest of the show going forward. It was entertaining, but it also distracted from the main narrative, like when the Book of Boba Fett series dedicated an entire episode to The Mandalorian. I also felt that timing-wise, this was released a bit too late. This should have been one of the first Disney Plus series because of the similarities to WandaVision, like I said earlier, but also because it touches on the public sphere of people with superpowers. It seems maybe they're using this to try to lay the groundwork for folding the mutants into the MCU after Secret Wars, but I don't know. When Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. first started on ABC, there were rumors about a spin-off show about damage control, and this kind of feels like what that could have been, but also damage control are just kind of lame antagonists who don't really do anything until the last episode, and even then, I also felt that since this is a show about making a superhero movie in a world where superheroes are real, there could have been some more meta commentary on that. They could have touched on that a bit more, maybe been a bit more satirical with it. And also, the show just kind of ends without any sort of resolution. So while it does have some pacing and narrative structure issues, it's still a highly entertaining show that I highly recommend to those looking for a fun buddy comedy and a love letter to the art of filmmaking and acting. Wonder Man is wonderful, and it's the best out of these movies and shows that I saw over the past couple of months. It comes in at number one. Then share a ranking of the January and February releases that you saw, and I'll see you next time.